Hello, so this is part two of my alien drawing. Already, I know you haven't seen it yet, but the end product so far is a lot better than it was, as you see it now. I've just been working on details basically, and you'll see what I mean in a bit anyway. But as I've been drawing, I was listening to Jordan Peterson, both doing talks about his book and talking with Joe Rogan, but the interview was from 2016, so it was mostly about the pronoun use. But something came up when he was talking about his book, and I found it really interesting, and it links to what I was talking about in the previous video, which was the book review on Tolstoy. And I know Jordan Peterson's actually recommended reading Tolstoy before, which is probably why I read one of his books. And I said something how he blames himself for his downfall, because obviously he gets ill and he starts questioning the things that he did wrong and the things that he should have done to make it better. And Jordan Peterson, obviously, he says a lot to take responsibility for your own actions. So maybe this is a representation of that, I guess, rule, to take responsibility. So although he wasn't necessarily at fault for his actions, he didn't go around pointing the fingers at everybody else and blaming them. He just took that upon himself. And that was regardless of the state of his current condition, which was absolutely appalling based on the description given in the book. So I found that very interesting. I sort of just wanted to mention it as an added point. But this commentary probably isn't really going to be much of a book review. I'll just try and talk about stuff for 13 minutes, which is what I usually do on these videos. So I don't really know actually what to talk about. I should probably plan ahead. And I know I said that at the end of the last one because I ran out of things to talk about as well, but I'll just keep thinking about things that I can talk about, and then it's like, well, I'm still talking, and maybe somebody will find this interesting. And maybe it's actually a part of human nature to not know what to talk about all the time, because, like, we're pretty stupid sometimes, and that's just a fact. I might just keep talking about things that Jordan Peterson talks about and what I find interesting about the things he talks about. So he often refers to us as being quite weak, and we need to have goals, and it doesn't necessarily matter about our current position, but what really matters is the fact that we're going on an upward trajectory towards some sort of higher goal, and that's what gives us meaning, essentially. And what's important is that the goal of which we are aiming towards is of something of value to us, and if we don't value the goal, then perhaps we've got our lives wrong. And maybe that links to Tolstoy as well. So Ivan Ilyich towards the end of his life, thought that maybe he didn't live his life right, and that's because he was suffering so much at the end. But the thing is, you could actually say that Ivan Ilyich did live his life right, because he had a goal and he was going on an upwards trajectory, and he wasn't happy when he lost his first job. He actually became extremely depressed, and he became resentful of people who were in higher positions than him, and he was trying to get a job at a university, and he found out that someone else had actually attained that job, and he just became extremely hateful towards them and hateful towards the world. And this is something that Jordan Peterson actually ushers us not to do. We shouldn't necessarily compare ourselves to the progress of what others are doing, rather we should compare ourselves to the person we were yesterday, and just try and become a better person than that. Otherwise, if we're constantly comparing ourselves to everyone else, then we're going to become bitter and resentful, because we can't necessarily be that which someone else is, because we all have different abilities, and therefore we all should aim towards the things that are right for us and not what is right for the person who's sitting next to us, because we're just going to be good at different things. So yeah. So maybe that was something that Ivan Ilyich did wrong. He did compare himself to other people, and perhaps that was a component to his downfall. He cared more about being the best out of everyone than being better than the person that he was yesterday. Yeah, so I found that really interesting. And I sometimes struggle to establish a goal and actually work towards it. But maybe that's because, well, this is based on something that Jordan Peterson said about 5 minutes ago on this video, on the videos I've been watching. He said that we need to make sure that we're aiming low enough. And that doesn't necessarily mean aiming lower than that which we are capable of, but it means aiming lower than that which we're not capable of achieving. So we can set ourselves a goal to go and climb Mount Everest or run a marathon, but say next week, but we haven't actually been doing the training in order to be able to do that, and we don't have the time to do the training. Therefore, we will inevitably fail at doing that set thing. We have to set ourselves a realistic goal. So instead of saying I'm going to go run a marathon or climb Mount Everest, say, okay, well, I'm going to go for a walk on the beach, or I'm going to go for a 10-minute jog, and then you keep building that up, taking smaller steps each, taking larger steps each day. But you can't just jump from lifting 70-pound weights to lifting 300-pound weights, because then you're going to injure yourself, and it's just not going to be productive. So you almost have to know your limits for your current self, but also have that ultimate goal of something that you want to achieve in the future. And Jordan Peterson talks about that a lot. He says we can't necessarily do that which is going to just make ourselves feel positive now, or something that we're going to be able to attain now. It has to also benefit ourselves in the future, so tomorrow and the day after, and maybe even 5 years from now or 60 years from now. Because life is just complex in that way. We exist on multiple different levels, and we can't just act in the present, because the present isn't necessarily all there is. However, that would perhaps be debatable if you took a Buddhist perspective on that issue. So, and not only does it have to benefit us now and in the future, but it also has to work conducively with the people around us. So, and that's due to the reasons that we are a social species. So we can't necessarily just do that which benefits us all the time. We also have to fit into the social sphere, and if we can't fit into the social sphere, then we will be socially excluded or alienated, and then that's not necessarily good for us, because then we won't be able to progress, because then we're lacking in an essential part of our species nature. We have to fulfill those certain needs, as well as our basic needs such as food and sleep and things like that. We also have to maintain a degree of socialization, I guess you could call it, or sociability, and it obviously matters as to what we're doing within a social circle or something like that, because we can be socializing, but we could also be doing things which are actually causing us to go on a downward trajectory. So, for example, we could have a great group of friends, but what do we do with those group of friends? Maybe we just sit and play video games all day. Maybe we just sit and drink alcohol or take drugs, and that's all we do. So those sorts of things aren't necessarily conducive to promoting the social, aren't necessarily conducive to promoting our success in the future and now. We may be happy doing these things, but we may derive some sort of hedonistic benefit like pleasure, but it's not necessarily going to actually produce a meaningful result, as opposed to maybe setting ourselves quite a big goal of wanting to run a marathon, which we then fulfill through the means of completing lots of smaller goals. So I think that's quite I think that's an interesting point that I've learned from watching Jordan Peterson. I've actually got his book upstairs, 12 Rules for Life, but currently my mum's reading it, so I haven't actually started reading it yet, but I'm pretty familiar with a lot of it based on his lectures that he's done, and the talks that he's done to groups of people, and obviously posted those on YouTube. So I sort of have an idea of what it's about. But it will be interesting to actually get down and read it, because, you know, I think Jordan Peterson's been a big benefit to my life over the last, I'm going to say, year and a half. I think I've been watching him for about a year and a half, maybe a little bit longer, can't remember exactly. But, yeah, I don't necessarily think that I would have done as well in my A levels, if it hadn't have been partly for him, partly for my teacher, and partly for some of the other people in my lives, and even myself, really, because obviously you've got to want to change, you've got to want to succeed. Like, part of it can come from other people, and they can almost be the catalyst for getting you to start moving on that upwards trajectory. But it ultimately has got to come from you. And like, if you'd have asked, if someone had told me maybe like 2 years ago that I would have come out of philosophy, finished all my exams and got an A star, I would have probably laughed at them and thought that they were joking and lying and all this stuff. And yeah, but it can happen. So if you put your mind to something and you set yourself that goal and you do the necessary work in order to be able to get there, then you will get there. It's just inevitable. You can't fail. If you want something really bad, you'll get it. And even, I'm going to say, after I'd done my exams, I didn't think I was going to come out with an A star. I thought that I was actually going to fail. I didn't think I was going to fail necessarily. I thought I was going to get a C or a B, which I wouldn't necessarily have been really happy with. I would have been okay with it, but I don't know. I just know that now I did the best I possibly could have in that subject, and yeah, it's just a really good feeling. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go and do philosophy, because it was like I was saying before, you can't compare yourself to the goals of other people. Like, I bet there's a lot of people who are watching this video who are really good at biology. They could do a biology exam or a biology course and come out with the highest possible grade. Now, I wouldn't be able to do that with my current knowledge, because it's not my specific subject. It's not something that I'm versed in particularly well. So it's just what you're interested in and what you're good at, and you can just pursue that and just become the best you possibly can at it, and just make sure you're going on an upward trajectory, and don't worry about the people around you too much. Obviously worry about them because we're a social species, but don't worry too much about their successes. Just focus on how you're doing and how you can better yourself in comparison to yourself and not in comparison to other people. To quote Jordan Peterson again. Probably get fed up of hearing me talk about him, to be honest, because I do talk about him a lot. But anyway, you probably see what I mean with the alien guy. I did a lot more of these, intricate details. So this is just a sort of pattern that I developed myself, and I really like the look of it, and I've used it in quite a lot of my doodle type pictures, and it's fun to do, and it's quite therapeutic because you've got to focus a lot when you're drawing it. But also you can, it's not like one of those things where it's an observational drawing, so you can have your attention, say, on videos or music in the background and still do an okay job at it. But anyway, this is going to cut out in approximately 5 seconds, so I'll cut it off here. So yeah, thank you for watching, leave a like and subscribe, and bye!